Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 99, Meno 79e to 80b. Socrates has just asked Meno again to tell him what virtue is. We've already discussed the problem that Meno has because he has no other answer to give. Socrates has specifically asked for an answer from Meno and his companion, in other words, from Gorgias. But Meno has already given the two possible answers that Gorgias could have given. Meno gave those two answers first. His third answer was one that he made up himself based on a poet. One possible reason for Socrates shutting Meno down by returning to Gorgias is simply that the discussion will no longer get very far if Meno continues to give answers. It's not as if he doesn't have any answers, but the two answers from Gorgias and the one answer he has made up from a poet are not satisfactory for Socrates. Meno still has those answers, but he can't give them to Socrates. So let's see what Meno has to say. O Socrates, ekuon men egoge prin kai sungenestaisoi, hoti su uden allo e autoste apores, kai tus alus poies aporen. O Socrates, I used to hear, even before meeting you, that you did nothing other than put yourself into an aporia and make others as well reach a state of aporia. Meno here isn't using the noun aporia, but the verb to get into an aporia or to be in a state of aporia. We've already seen in this dialogue the word poros to mean acquisition, and aporia, the lack of acquisition, or the non-supply. This can pertain not simply to gold and silver, as it was earlier, but also to giving answers. If you have an aporia, you are unable to provide an answer. To be in a state of aporia can also mean to be in a state of puzzlement, to have a problem. But Meno doesn't sound as if he's particularly puzzled or as if he has a problem. He's actually quite pleased. He's already heard about Socrates doing this, and here he is doing it. This puts a new light on something Meno asked a long time ago, when Socrates had said that he could not only not say what sort of thing virtue was, but he didn't know at all what virtue was. And Meno had said, "Is that what you want me to tell people back home?" Now we learn that Meno was prepared for this. Meno had heard. He used to hear. It's even stronger than simply heard once. He used to hear that this is the sort of thing Socrates does. He is in a state of aporia himself, and he causes other people to be in a state of aporia. This is the sort of thing Meno will be happy to tell people back home. He can say, yes, Socrates did that with me, exactly the sort of thing you have heard from other people. Unfortunately, it's one thing to say that Socrates himself doesn't know the answer, but Meno does know the answer. He thinks he has answers. It's simply that Socrates refuses to accept them. It wouldn't sound very good if he told people back home that not only does Socrates not have any answers himself, but he stops Meno giving the answers which he has. That isn't very clever. Meno still has those answers. It doesn't sound like Meno has an aporia? What if Meno says that he's been bewitched? Kai nun, hoske moi dokes, goetiu esme kai pharmates kai atechnos katepades, ostemeston aporias gegonenai. And now, as you seem to me, you are bewitching me and drugging me and in general enchanting me, so that I have become full of aporia. This is now an interesting story to tell the people back home. He has been bewitched by Socrates. Notice that he is full of aporia. Aporia has become, yet again, a material, a concrete thing, just as Meno had treated virtue. Kai dokes moi pantelos e deiti kai skopsai homoiotatos enai tote eidos kai tala taute te platea narke te thalatia. And you absolutely seem to me, if it's necessary to joke about this, most similar, especially in appearance, to this flat torpedo fish of the sea. The torpedo fish is the narke, which gives us important words such as narcotics and narcosis. Narke is the electric eel, or a type of electric eel. I'm not an expert on sea creatures. And the narke can give an electric shock, which numbs, hence narcotics. Although this is one of the most famous passages in all of the Platonic corpus, people seem not to want to know that Meno says this narke. Either Meno and Socrates are standing underwater in the sea, or, more likely, they are near a place where fish are being sold. The most obvious place would be the Athenian agora. It won't be the last time in this dialogue when somebody says this or that, and we have to imagine that they're pointing at something. We should note before we carry on that Meno is making a joke. He's enjoying himself. This doesn't sound like someone who is in a real aporia. It's often said that Socrates leads people away from thinking that they know something to realizing that they don't know anything about a particular subject, and this is a shock to them. Such a person would really feel numbed and might think that Socrates is like a torpedo fish, numbing them. But Meno isn't numbed. You may have noticed that he is talking, and this is the most he's said in a very long time, and there's still much more to come. Kai gara aute ton aeple si adonta kai haptomenon narkan poie, kai suto kes moi nun emetoi utonti pepoie kenai. For it always causes someone who comes close and touches it to be numbed. And you seem to me to have made me some such person. Alithoscar egoge, kai tem psuchen, kai tostoma narko, kai uk echo hoti apokrino maisoi. For truly I am numb, both in soul and in mouth, and I don't have anything that I may answer you. Or simply, I cannot answer you. As we've already pointed out, Meno does still have the answers he originally gave. It's simply Socrates who refuses to accept them. As for being numb in soul and mouth, Meno has probably heard that this is what Socrates does. He numbs people into being unable to answer. But in Meno's case, he's just putting on an act, and we can see that that's the case because he's laughing and joking and telling Socrates in great detail that he is numb in his mouth. Kaitoi muriakis ke periarites pampollus logus eureka kai prospollus kai panuiu hoskem auto edokun nunde ud hoties dinto parapan echoepen. And indeed, many times have I spoken many words about virtue, and to many people, and quite well, as I seem to myself. But now I can't say anything at all. Meno uses the expression he used at the very beginning of the dialogue, can you say? Here he's saying, I cannot say. And he's using it with toparapan, which is what Socrates used to emphasize just how much he didn't know. He didn't know anything at all. And here Meno is saying, I can't say anything at all. Basically, Meno is making a virtue out of his failure to have another answer about virtue, and blaming Socrates for it. And this itself is yet another benefit, because he can tell people back home just how powerful Socrates was in numbing him into silence. The people back home will never hear the end of this story. For good measure, Meno adds a warning. Kai moi dokes iu buliu estai uk ekpleon enthende ud apodemon. Egar xenos en alle polle toiauta poiois, tachanhos goes apachthees. And you seem to me to be making the right decision not to leave here, in other words, Attica, either by sea or by land. For if, as a xenos, you were to do such things in another city, you would most probably be taken away as an enchanter. The implication is that Meno thinks that Socrates is getting away with what he's doing in Athens. The people here are so lenient, and we may realize that this wasn't the case. Just a few years later, Socrates would be executed. Although I wouldn't want to say that that was because he was considered an enchanter. It's not clear from this last remark whether Meno is still joking or he's suddenly become very serious. We'll see next time that Socrates treats it as if he's still joking.